Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Success Series. I'm your host, David Berg, with Christina Langbort. Absolute pleasure to be here with her today. She is the head of business development at Hilldun Corporation and so much more, a mother, a seed investor. We're going to dive into her story and how she achieved all this great success, as well as also being a wonderful person. So Christina, thank you for being here with us today.
Wow, thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure. We've been talking about this for some time, so I'm very happy to be here with you.
Absolutely. For our listeners who don't know you, if you can give a little sort of high-level intro as to who you are, what you do, and we'll dive into your story.
Yes, absolutely. So as you said, Christina Langbort, I work at Hilldun Corporation for the last 17 years, heading up the business development. Prior to that, well, let me just give you a little bit of a step back.
Sure.
I grew up in Central Illinois, and I moved to New York in 2004. Always had a big desire to live in the big city. Came to New York, worked for a French skin and hair care company, where I was helping to launch the brand in the US, managing people, dealing with skincare, and I did that, as I mentioned, for about 4 or 5 years. And then I came across the current position that I'm at, Hilldun, which I knew was something involved in fashion and something involved in financing and sales and business development, which I knew was a path that I wanted to take. But I wasn't exactly sure what it was. Here we are 17 years later, and I oversee the global business development for Hilldun. I run a 10-person internship program where I help to inspire and motivate and lead the next generation of young professionals. I'm also a mom and have made some investments as well along the way. Hilldun is a company that was started by my friend's grandfather, and I had the privilege of working with him now, which is very interesting. He's actually my boss, somebody that we were just contemporaries, and now, we get to work side by side. We at Hilldun focus in supporting the growth of entrepreneurs, primarily in the fashion, apparel, footwear, accessory, the global luxury fashion space. And so we help to finance production, we help to finance cash flow, we help to really allow a young entrepreneur to live their dream.
So I know that you're just an unbelievable salesperson, a great connector with people. We have mutual connections, Mike Patterson and many others. What do you think it is about your skill set and your gifts that allow you to be such a great salesperson, but way more than that, somebody who understands people and can build great relationships both professionally and in your personal life?
Well, I think something about my skills is ever since I was younger, I've always had a real appreciation for sales and dealing with people. I mean, I remember when I was like 13 or 14 years old, selling candles around my neighborhood. My mom had a particular product that she was involved with. It was powdered candles.
Good.
So you would, you had like vanilla, you had cranberry, and you could mix the colors around, and I would go around the neighborhood selling to all the people in the neighborhood, just knocking on the doors and saying, oh, I have this really cool product, and I would do these demonstrations. So I always understood how to connect to people and to provide something that maybe the person didn't know they needed. I think just understanding a little bit about myself over the years, I have a good ability to have, connection and empathy with people. I can relate to people on various levels. And I try to see the uniqueness in the person and the superpower that the person has and help to really empower them to go forward. So I think that particular skill set, being able to identify, talent, having an ability to connect to people, allows for somebody to be successful in sales. And that's transferable whether you're selling, factoring and financing, or as you mentioned our buddy Mike Patterson, or selling, electrification in the auto space and batteries.
Right.
For electric vehicles.
So transferable, regardless of industry you're in, regardless of the product you're selling, if you have those abilities, you're able to understand people and connect with them, you'll be a great salesperson.
I think so. I think you really need to have, strong leadership. And to me, what strong leadership is the ability to, get other people to follow your vision while also empowering them to become their own leaders, right? A great leader is not somebody who's just got a bunch of followers, but they really, have managed to create strong leaders.
Love that. A lot of people, especially in today's day and age, churn rates in companies is 3 years, 4 years at most. What has allowed you to both be successful and stay in the company for 17 plus years?
That's a great question. I do think that turnover happens a little bit more frequently, and I think I've been fortunate because I do work for a company that's been able to identify my needs along the way, right? So I started out just sort of as an individual salesperson that was, self-driven and self-motivated, generating business for the company. But over the years, I guess it was about 5 years in, I started an internship program in 2011 where I was able to give back and educate and help mentor and guide. So it started really on a small scale. And then when we had COVID a couple years back and our company went fully remote for 2 years,
Wow.
I had a few interns that were international students that had come over on visas, and they were really excited about what they were doing. Our offices were closing what we thought was going to be for 2 weeks, but in fact, they closed much longer. So the people that were on the team asked if they could continue doing the internship from a remote capacity. Well, I thought it would be very temporary, so I said, of course, we'll do it. That eventually grew, and whereas the internship program in the past was more just sort of individual by individual, we built out an actual infrastructure where we have an efficient system and group of, at any one time up to 10, global interns. And so it's allowed me to use my skills for nurturing, mentoring, teaching, which I really love. I'm a Sagittarius, and I'm a seeker of truth and foreign culture. So I have an entire intern team based really abroad.
Incredible.
We have like one in New York, but everybody else is based throughout Europe. I even had in Abu Dhabi.
How do you manage those time zones?
It's interesting.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I try to make myself available. There are certain times in the day that I block off, but so you asked about my company. So they've allowed and supported me throughout that, knowing that, by living my authentic purpose and truth, I'm going to be more successful and more effective for them, which ultimately allows me to feel comfortable and happy where I'm at and not needing to seek elsewhere.
Right. I think that's fascinating. Some of our guests are founders. Some of our guests have been at companies and become very successful as well. I think for our audience, a lot of them younger and looking to decide on a career path, to know that you can be extremely successful working in a corporation. You don't need to necessarily start a company is really profound as well. So let me talk through, because I have no doubt that if you did choose to go and do your own thing, maybe even in the same industry, you'd be wildly successful. Not to say that would be a better or worse path. What do you think is, if somebody's thinking about, should I start a company? Should I go work for a company and build something there? What would your advice to them be?
I think it all depends on what stage in life you're at. Not that there's any particular, time limitation, but when you're in your infancy of your professional career, and you don't really have anything to give up, it's very easy just to go, full on and devote yourself to something at 100% capacity, versus if it's a little bit later and you have different obligations, whether it's financial, whether it's personal, etc., you might have to think a little bit more carefully if you could just full on dive in. You might be able to start something on the side, which I highly suggest people do if they're engaged in something and they have a true desire to do something bigger and do something more independently. But I just think it depends on where they're at in their life. Younger with nothing to lose, go all in.
Right.
A little bit more established, maybe go all in depending on how established you are.
Sure.
And where you are in life, and your ability to dedicate all your time to your mission.
Right.
Or do it on the side and then go all in when you've kind of balanced it out.
I like that. Yeah, because if you have 3-4 kids and a family to take care of, you don't have the luxury of a 20-year-old in college who literally has no responsibilities. So.
Listen, you can balance both. It's a work-life harmony, but at the end of the day, something does suffer. To be fully present and engaged in what you're doing requires you to be fully present and engaged with what you're doing. So I know I have a lot of friends, you mentioned Mary Ruth, that she's done an incredible job with her block scheduling and such to be able to create structure. Structure really does create freedom.
Right.
But it can also create rigidity as well. So you have to be able to really balance and be fully engaged in what it is you're responsible for at any one time. Understanding there's a little bit of flexibility where you can do both, but
Sure.
It needs to be, You got to be present where you need to be present.
Right. And jumping back to the 17 years, we talk to people all the time and they say, I'm looking for excitement in my work, and they've been there for 6 months and they're already bored. How do you maintain excitement and a desire after, almost 2 decades of work without losing that fire to continue to push?
Well, every day is a new day. And as you know, I'm in business development. So, the art of structuring a deal or finding a new particular, fashion company to work with or to build a relationship with is exciting to me. So every day is new. And I don't rest on my laurels. I take every day as a new opportunity to go and create. And having the team of interns that I work very closely with really inspires me, and it requires me to show up and to be fully present and to be there for somebody else. So again, just as an employer, you want to make sure that you're understanding your employees' needs, especially if you're working. If you're working for a big corporation, it's perhaps a little bit different unless you have a good relationship with the manager. But the company that I work for is it's a family-owned third generation business. So there's about 50 employees. So the owners are really in touch with what the employee needs, and so they understand that element of like mentorship and guidance really helps. And then I also, as I said, I was a Sagittarius. I love travel, exploration, and so I'm fortunate that I get to travel a lot internationally, which also motivates and drives me.
Sure. What are some of the most exciting opportunities, either places that you traveled for work or companies that you've worked with and throughout your career?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I guess the first exploratory trip that I took to London and Paris, I'd been to London and Paris before, but for business, was really exciting and mind-blowing. Just getting to see the different side of the fashion industry, getting to know some of the designers that you only would read about that didn't necessarily come to New York. That was very interesting, and building relationships transatlantic was something that I really loved. Most recently, and I say this was probably one of the coolest places I went for work, was Copenhagen.
Wow.
They have an incredible fashion scene, these Scandinavian countries, and it was really great to go and explore. It's something that I hadn't really done in about 12 years, because I always go to Paris, I always go to London, I always go to Italy or Las Vegas or LA or Miami. But to go to a place that I'd actually never been before and just have to start from the beginning, contacting people, making new relationships with various industry people, it was a new adventure.
Yeah. On that note, a lot of people have fear of approaching people they don't know, starting conversation, even small talk. How was that ever a challenge for you? And if it wasn't, then what do you attest that to? But I assume that at some point it wasn't easy, right? Nobody's born with that, so to speak.
I grew up with a mom who could talk to anybody, and she often did a lot of public speaking, and I was always like so in awe at her ability to go up and just talk, and she just talked to anybody. I'd say now I can talk to anybody. I don't have any fear, but it did not come till probably after I had my first child. I can say I was successful in business along the way in whatever ventures that I was in, but there was always a little bit of a fear taking a meeting with perhaps a certain CEO or a certain president or something like that. I definitely would have a little bit of apprehension or a little bit of nervousness.
Right.
But once I had my first child, that sort of gave me strength to know, wait, I can do anything, I know it's tying in a bit of personal with business, but
Right.
It's like that bit of, success that I experienced in birthing a child and then having the second child, that sort of skyrocketed me. And then, of course, the various success milestones that I had in my business. But those things helped me to be able to understand that, everybody's just a normal person, and if you can find a way to connect, and generally if you come with a smile and you come with the warmth, you can relate to anybody.
Right. I like that you tie the personal to the professional. I think that happens often in life. We're presented with opportunities in our personal life that then correlate to our business success. So it's interesting. What do you think about being a mother and how that influences not just that moment of pregnancy and giving birth, but also as just being a mother as a whole? Is there a direct correlation to the success in business? How do you balance the time? How do you do both great? Like, kind of give our audience a little view into that.
I mean, I think anybody can balance both of them quite successfully with a bit of structure. You know, I'm blessed. I have a good husband. We have good communication. So we've really worked over the past few years to have, you know, proper systems. I find that things can fall through the cracks when you're not communicating and you don't have a structure and you don't have a plan. And somebody thinks that they were supposed to be doing this when it was really the other person that was supposed to be doing it.
Right.
You know, it's really when there's a failure in communication within the marriage, also known as a business, right? You're running a business with your spouse.
Sure.
You're running a household. You have to have communication. You have to have structure. You have to have routine. You have to have consistency. And if you do that, you know, it's simple. It works. It works. But getting to the point where you actually get the systems in place is usually what holds people up, because it's, you know, it's not so common just to look at a situation and say, okay, what system do we need in place to make it most effective and most efficient?
Right.
And if you do that, then you can manage having a family, you can manage having a business. You know, and I think it's very important. You know, I have a daughter and I have a son, thank God. And my daughter recently came with me on a business trip to Paris a few weeks ago.
That's awesome.
And, you know, I had to explain to her, because it was very last minute, you know, when she's going to school, and then she's supposed to have an activity after school, and then before you know it, we're on the way to the airport. She didn't really understand what was going on, but I explained to her, you know, mommy has work to do, and I'm, you know, mommy is needed in her work, and she brings value to the company, and they need me to go do something, and so we're going to go on a work trip. So it was never about like, oh, mommy has to work to make money or something like that. I always try to empower and say, you know, mommy's smart and mommy's good at what she does, and so we have to, you know.
Love that.
Yeah, because it teaches somebody that you're not doing something to fulfill something for the child. You're doing it because you're fulfilling something in you. You know, mommy's good at what she does. She enjoys what she does. And this is, you know, I think it empowers our daughter. Our son's still a little bit young.
Yeah.
But we gear him to think big as well.
Love that. What are your hopes for your kids on a sort of broader scheme level?
Well, I hope that they're happy, of course, first and foremost. And I hope that they always have a strong connection to the Creator, which we, you know, prioritize in our family. And understand that any of their blessings can be, you know, taken at any time, that we are just here for a temporary period, and, you know, we really have to work hard to be good people, to have appreciation, to have gratitude, and to really, you know, leave our mark in the world. So for them, I would want them to do something that's in alignment with their personal truth, something that makes them happy. And I know if you do things that make you happy, then you'll ultimately be successful. So of course I want them to be successful and happy, but I feel the two go hand in hand.
They will be successful.
They have to, yeah, it's like if you're happy first, then you'll be successful. It's like if you're wanting money or you're wanting peace in the home, well, if you have money, you just have money. But if you have like peace in the home, then you'll also have money.
Right.
So it's like,
right.
kind of get both things.
I think that's fascinating, because a lot of times you see people that become uber successful and then they start to become depressed, or the happiness dissipates. Whereas in building to get to that point, they maybe were very happy and that's what drew the blessings in. But then there's the lack of fulfillment when the blessings do come in, and then the happiness kind of goes away. I think that's where the Creator ties in. You mentioned the Creator. Give our audience a little bit more into, do you grow up in spirituality? Like, what does the Creator mean to you? What's your connection to spirituality today in raising your kids?
Yeah, absolutely. So I did grow up with a very strong connection to God, to the Creator, and He was very, you know, important part of my life. I always understood that there was something outside myself, and I had that, you know, divine connection. So that was always in me. I guess it was in my early 30s when I was introduced to a Kabbalah class, which, you know, totally transformed and changed my life, all for the better. And helped me to understand that, you know, everything that I was experiencing in life was really just a function of my mind, my consciousness. You know, I think one of the best concepts that I've come across in the study of Kabbalah is just that, you know, consciousness truly does create your reality, and that I'd say 99% of what we're experiencing is just a reflection of, like, you know, what's in our mind. So the role that the Creator has today is very, you know, very prevalent. We certainly have like family time where we are, you know, giving thanks, and we have a great community of friends that we consider like family. And, as a family collectively, with my husband and I, and what we try to empower our kids with is just becoming better and knowing that there's some greater force outside of them that they can always count on. It's like a cell phone that they're like a cell phone that they can just charge and plug, and they'll be sustained and fulfilled, and that nothing external is going to bring that type of charge, as if you fill your mind, your body, and your spirit all in one. So I think it's, I'm very excited from what I understand, even at the Kabbalah Center, that they're doing more with the youth, which I think is very important. I feel that I was privileged in having a family that instilled these values and gave me a strong connection to the Creator. But, and then I'm able to do that to my children. But I don't think everybody has that, which is why we have a society of, anxiousness, sadness, emptiness, seeking external validations, and so I think it's very important for the youth to be able to tap in and to have connections, something greater than themselves.
Sure. We see a lot of people who are successful without spirituality, right? Monetarily, at least. What do you think the difference between one who has spirituality in their life and is successful versus one who is not spiritual but still has a success? Do they have a different experience of the money? How would you, right? Because that would be my first thought. It's like, there's many people that are very successful, maybe aren't even good people necessarily, right? So how does that make sense?
Well, again, what is success, right? I think a person has to ask themselves, what is success? If it's how much money is in your bank account or how many, assets you have, okay, that's, that might be for one person. But if somebody can wake up in the morning and have an inner peace and have an inner connection and understand that, like, even if everything got taken away, that inner peace can't be taken away.
Right.
So I don't necessarily, I wouldn't, personally speaking, I wouldn't quantify what success is based upon, somebody's material items, because, we've seen in a number of cases, we've seen success stories,
right.
Most recently even that Harvey Weinstein success stories where the person was, flying high, et cetera. And then now, unfortunately they're ill in a cell.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, I think it's very important to have some sort of a spiritual practice, whatever that means for you. I always like to say, many rivers, one ocean.
Many rivers, one ocean.
As long as you have some sort of a connectivity to, a greater power, and understand that the externals are for you to enjoy, but they're not for you to, worship. There's nothing wrong with money, but it's the worshiping of the money that I think is where people can run into issues. Because, and thinking that you're the creator of whatever you have, right? We are co-creators, I do believe. However, we have a partner. And if you wake up every day knowing that you have the best partner in the world, you have the creator, you're not doing it on your own. So it's never about you. You have humility. And I think it's very important at whatever level of success you're at to have humility and to know that it's not just coming from you.
Right.
And you've got blessings from whatever it may be, from your good doings or whatnot, that allow you to have what you have.
Right. I think I like what you're saying, but I think it's very hard, especially for high performers like yourself and I, that are working so hard on a day-to-day basis, that push tremendously, right, day after day after day. And then when the success comes in, to somehow let go of the ownership or feeling like it was because of you.
To let it
you don't
go.
have
It's very important to not, because if you're not showing up and creating, then, you're a participant.
Right.
So you have to take credit for your hard work. There's nothing wrong with taking credit. But if you're exclusively thinking it's because I did this or because of my efforts, it's like even in business development, it's a third, let's say cold calling and prospecting,
sure.
It's a third referrals, and it's a third luck, right? Or in any kind of business. So you have to understand that you have to do your part, and you can take ownership and feel good, but you can't, I think one has to be careful not to consume themselves with that thought that it's just because of them that something is happening.
Right.
It's when you take the creator out of the picture that I think a person can feel significant lack or feel emptiness because they think that it's all just because of them. And then the first time somebody doesn't give you the compliment or tell you you did a good job scoring that big deal, or someone's not impressed with XYZ, then
you feel like zero.
You feel like a zero.
Right.
You're like, well, what do you mean? I did all this work.
Right. Then you're just, you're always chasing the next fulfillment.
If that answers your question.
It does. I like it. The creator's your co-founder. He's invisible, but he's
co-founder.
Right.
Yes, that energy force that's with you at all times.
Love it. I think some of the best learnings are not from your successes, but from the things that you struggled with, your challenges. What is one of the most challenging or just overall like not great experiences that you had in your professional career? And was there a moment where you felt like this is just going to all fall apart?
I don't know if this is a big challenge, but I mean, as I said, I moved from the Midwest to New York, not really knowing many people. I had done a study abroad in Italy, and I had met some friends, but I grew up, like 2 hours south of Chicago. I came to New York in 2004, not really knowing so many people, not having any experience even in the French beauty company that I worked in. So I always viewed that as a disadvantage because I was surrounded by kids who, they were from New York City, or they were from like right outside of New York City, and their, families got them the job where they needed to because they went to college with the person that was working at the company. And it was like, why do I have to work so hard? I didn't have those same connections, but in fact, that was actually something I think that helped me. Another challenging moment that I had, and it was not necessarily professionally, but it was very impactful. My father passed away in 2007. So that was when I was working at my first job, but circumstances allowed, even in that business, where I was able to travel back to Chicago quite a bit just because of the territory, so to speak, that I was looking after. So I was going back quite often, and I got to spend time. I guess I was a little bit in denial that it was happening. And then when it did happen, it was challenging because I don't think I mentioned it. I have 2 half-brother and 2 half-sisters, but I kind of grew up as a pseudo-only child because they were like 20 years older.
Wow.
So I always felt that, my mom was my responsibility, especially after my father had passed away. So, that motivated me to become even more ambitious and push more. And I felt that I had somebody else I had to take care of. And so that was really the driving force. So I guess it was kind of a sad negative that propelled me to go forward.
Beautiful. And then the last thing I want to ask you is, if you could go back, let's say pre-career, any professional work you've done, and could give yourself one message knowing all that you know today, what would that be?
Be confident and take the risks that you want to take, because you'll always land on your feet.
Love that. Christina, thank you so much for being on the show. It was an absolute pleasure. Christina Langbort, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you all next week.